Yeah. We're going to talk about PR process. We talked about rope and race and Rosie a little bit, didn't we? Rope and race, those are the ones I prefer, but I'm partial to rope. We might also add an S to rope, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So here's important stuff to remember. Management process for PR. It comes from clear strategies. You got to know what you're doing, which means you have to have done your homework. Bottom line objectives. What does the bottom line refer to? Any ideas? What does bottom line mean?
Point blank.
Point blank? No. In accounting, there's a bottom line, and that means how much money you made. So management is going to deal with how much money you make. Does that make sense? Management's going to be focused on making money, and sometimes it's going to do things that needs PR people to clean up after it. What are tactics? You guys know what I mean when I talk about tactics? Huh?
Strategies?
No, they're not strategies, but they support strategies. Strategy is sort of a catch-all term for a lot of things.
You like plans?
Tactics are the actual media that you use. Either the actual media that you use or the actual pieces that you write. Like a press release, that is a tactic. Your strategy is get media coverage. Your tactic is write a press release. Does that make sense? Let's think of another example. Your strategy is to enhance employee, let's go with consumer relations, enhance employee attention to consumers, or enhance complaints handling. So your tactic is going to be like a training video. Or SFA, we talked about the sexual harassment video. Your tactic or your strategy is to get people to behave themselves, I guess, to not do sexually inappropriate things. So your tactic is to create some kind of script or training video or training program for them to help train people to behave themselves. So as PR professionals, we've got to constantly ask a lot of different stuff. I mean, yes, ma'am.
Sorry, can you turn those TVs on?
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. And this is not necessarily just PR professionals. This is us as students. This is us as educators. This is us as human beings. To be a human being, you need to constantly ask yourself what you're trying to achieve and what you're going to get out of achieving that. That is a principle of life right there. But especially so with PR. That's what I love about this class, about PR principles, is so many of these principles, they're not necessarily just principles for the field, they're principles for living. We've also got to ask ourselves, what is the nature of the environment in which we must operate? What's going on in our environment? What's going on financially? What's going on economically? What's going on culturally? What's going on politically? What kind of environment are we operating? What kind of environment are we operating here at SFA? How would you guys describe the SFA environment from a student's perspective? Is it friendly?
It's racist.
It's racist. Okay.
A little friendly.
A little friendly, but mostly racist. That's not a very good review of SFA. It is an unfortunate review of SFA, but it's true. I mean, you look at the jail population. I mean, what else? How else would we describe SFA? What else going on here? We're like a chicken processing community, right? What else are we? We're the best campus? Okay, so we have a nice, pretty campus environment. So we've got all kinds of factors. We need to know what the nature of our environment is so that when we come up with messages that we use to persuade people, strategic messages, messages with a purpose, we've got to know how they're going to interact with the environment whenever they reach people. As PR professionals, we also ask, who are our publics? Who do we need to convince that our management team is doing what needs to be done? How are we going to convince them about that? Or how are we going to convince people that our management is doing things in their public's best interest? So what we're going to see in this chapter, what we're going to see in this PowerPoint as we go through management, is that what PR people are doing has to sync up with what management itself is doing. Does that make sense? A lot of time PR is called in to clean up messes that management has made. But ideally, if your management is proactive, management is going to allow PR people in with management to be able to counsel. Remember, that was one of the functions of PR, to offer counsel and interpretation of publics. But PR work has got to sync up with management work. Does that make sense? Are we clear on that? Anybody disagree with that? That is a principle right there. PR work needs to closely follow management work. So ideally, PR should be a part of management. As I mentioned already, whenever PR is thrown in with marketing or advertising, it starts kind of taking on those characteristics of that department. It starts looking like advertising, or it starts looking like marketing. Ideally, PR should be the corporate conscience. What does that mean? What do I mean by that? Corporate conscience.
Like help the company make good decisions.
Very good, yes. We've all got a conscience that helps us make good decisions. And you guys remember the Lettingham article. PR's job ideally is to build relationships between a company and publics. And though it should be a part of management, the fact is usually it is subordinated with other departments, for instance, advertising or marketing. And so it ends up looking like those guys. So for more exploration of that principle, check out the Lettingham article. I know you guys like Lettingham. Who read the Lettingham article? Yeah, 2 people? You guys got to go back and read that. You were reading that in every single one of my classes, so make sure you learn that article. All right, so let's talk about the PR process. We've talked about this a little bit. When we conceptualize the PR plan, first off, we got to do our research. But we've got to define a problem. We've got to find these little opportunities. We've got to define these problems so we can know what we're dealing with. We can know how to address it. If you know you've got some big, vague, black cloud of a problem, and you can't really define it, then it makes it much more difficult to deal with it. We've also got to look at programming. This is cooking up our plan. The action is actually implementing it. This is sort of a race model right here, or similar to it. And then at some point we go into evaluation. We've got to evaluate how well our PR program worked. Now I'm a little bit different with Seitel on this. I mean, he's more about the process, and my personal opinion is that I'm more about the research. I don't think you can really have an effective process unless you've done your homework and you know what's going on. But I feel like research is the most critical part of PR. Seitel begs to differ, but that's okay. We're still on board that both parts of it are important. Now, we talked about rope the other day, right? I'm not going to go too deep into that because I kind of want to get through this. We've lost some time to technical difficulties. Who all seen a PR plan? Nobody. Who else seen an advertising plan? Nobody. Okay, well, you will see many. You will make a PR plan for this class. And I will be giving out the details of that assignment. We will be assigning groups at some point in the next couple of weeks so you guys can start working on the final project. So here's what a PR plan will look like. It's going to start, these are the sections of a PR plan. It's going to start with an executive summary. Who can tell me what an executive summary is?
More like a summary for the executive. Do they kind of know what's going on?
Yeah. Well, that is how it's used. Okay, all right, we can go with that. Yeah. It refers to the execution of the plan, the summary of the execution. But yes, executives do read it, so if that helps you remember what it is, great, works for me. Then you'll have a section on the communication process. You will look at the background. This will include like the history of the company, the history of the problem, things of that nature. And then you will do a situation analysis. This is where the company's at right now. You guys heard of SWOT analyses? What does SWOT stand for? Who's that?
Lost.
Lost, okay. Nice, welcome to come in here. SWOT analysis stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We talked about that in campaigns extensively the other day. I think we talked about it in here the other day too, didn't we?
Yes.
Okay. And let's see what else we got. Message statements. These refer to the message that you're trying to send to people. And as I'm fond of saying to all my PR students, a head on a stick is a message. Come on in, James. All right. Also in your PR plan, you're going to want to define the audiences, the publics that you're dealing with. You may want to break them down and segment them. Who knows what segmenting means? What is segmenting?
Breakdown.
Breaking it down, right. So we want to hit, the Dove campaign wants to hit women. Well, we might segment down into women, I don't know, 50 to 75, 30 to 50, then 10 to 30 or something like that. That's segmentation, when you break an audience down into different segments. And you want to have, in your plan, you're going to want to talk about the key audience messages. Sometimes you have to talk to people differently based on your relationship with them. Does that make sense? Some people you got to talk to differently, but as your relationship becomes closer, then the way you communicate with different people becomes more similar. Does that make sense? That is a principle right there. That is a test-worthy principle. Is that you have to talk to people differently based on what kind of relationship you have with them. That means different messages, you may have different messages for different segments or different publics. Then you want to talk about in your plan, you want to talk about implementation, how you're going to go about doing it. You want to have a timeline. Who else made a timeline for something that they're doing in their lives? Can you tell us about it?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming in school you have to put events in order and like run up the dates and then put up like a example, not example, but a description, I guess.
Okay.
Like what happened on that.
So it's like a timeline of the past?
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
a timeline of the future, like what we're looking for? Like,
Yeah, what about
what
plan?
Just kidding.
Like
Yeah.
your goals in life,
Like at this age when you do this, or
Yeah, things like that. So we're talking about a timeline. What do you guys expect to have accomplished 1 year from now? Graduation, year-long graduation. So look, if you focus on graduation and kind of exclude everything in the present, then you'll start feeling overwhelmed. You guys experienced that before? So you don't focus on graduation, what do? You focus on something more in the moment. It's going to take you to graduation. You focus on coming to Dr. Madison's class, learning what's on the PowerPoints, reading the book, and then that's manageable. That's manageable. Dealing with graduation right now, that's not manageable because there's so many different things. This is another principle of life right here. I want you guys to understand this. It took me years to understand this. You have big goals. You want to have, you start here, and you have like some big goal right here, right? Let's see, graduation. What are some of the smaller goals that you need to have before you can get through graduation?
Pass the classes.
I'm sorry?
Pass the classes.
Yeah, you want to pass the classes. That's kind of a big one. That's so we got tests. Let's notes. Let's start with that. We got to do notes. We'll probably be doing notes all the way through. We got to take tests. We got a test here, a test there.
Write papers.
A test here. What else?
Write papers.
We got to write papers. We have a paper here. We have a paper here. What else?
Internship.
You got an internship. That's a big one. Put internship right here. What else we got to
get accepted if we're not there.
do? Into the grad school?
No, like, I don't know, are we talking about ours or like?
Yeah, no, this is from day one, from what you guys are doing today up until the time you graduate.
Network.
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 What's that?
Network?
Network.
Network, okay. Yeah, that's going to be an ongoing thing. Always be networking. What else? That's probably enough. All right, let's divvy this up by time. All right, so we've got this month. We've got the month after that. We've got another month. We got another month or two. We got another month or two. So look, when you think of all the things you have to do, if you try to think about them all at once, you're going to freak out. Everybody does it. And you guys have probably experienced it before, but look, if we just look at this month, look at that. We got tests, we got to take notes, do some networking. That's simple, right? That's simple. You do this enough, and you just kind of follow the monthly thing, and eventually you're going to get there. So managing or dealing with PR and PR plans is very similar. You want to make some kind of plan, some kind of timeline, so that you're not overwhelmed by all the work that has to be done. You can just do a little bit at a time, and get to where you got to go. So these things cost money. Our PR plan is going to cost money, so we need to know how much it's going to cost. This is probably the most challenging part. Unless you're doing everything for free and not getting paid, there's no money involved. Then budgets can be very difficult to deal with because you never know how much stuff's going to cost. Prices fluctuate, things happen. The budget, we'll talk more about budget when you get to campaigns and a little bit of PR writing. Then you've got to have some plan for monitoring and evaluation. I've talked about this before. You want to monitor your results so that you find out if you're screwing up. If you figure out, oh wait, I didn't take notes or I haven't been networking, I need to increase these things before I graduate, then you can make a conscious effort to try to increase them. So that's pretty much 10 steps. That's what a PR plan looks like. It's going to have these sections in it, or something very similar to it. Does that make sense? So we talked about the PR process. You got to do your homework, your research. You got to come up with a PR plan, and this is it. Now let's look at implementation real quick. Wait, hold on. We've already talked about that. Let's talk about setting objectives. Anybody tell me the difference in goals and objectives? What's a goal and what's an objective?
Goal, you're striving to do it. Objective, you've done it.
What's that?
Goals, you're striving to do it. Objective, you've done it.
Wait, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak up?
Goals is you've accomplished it, and objectives is you're still trying to accomplish it.
No, not necessarily. Yes, ma'am.
Goals is what you're working towards. Is objectives like either the steps to take or what the result from taking those steps.
You're getting there. I like goals, but you're getting there. Anybody else? What's the difference in goals and objectives? Yes.
Objectives are things, I guess, that have to be done to achieve your goals.
I can go with that. Yes. I'm liking this. I'm liking this.
For example, like,
No.
if you want to graduate, your objectives are you got to study for today, get the proper amount of, well, if you want to pass the test,
Right.
you got to complete your objectives, but means studying for each chapter,
Right.
getting the proper amount of sleep before, eating great breakfast.
Great breakfast. Yes, exactly. Those are objectives. They're measurable. That's you got a good grasp of this. The difference in goals and objectives. Goals are broad and vague. The goals are, I'm going to graduate, or I'm going to pass the test. The objectives are measurable. Here's the formula for objectives. This is the formula I like to use. We want to do something to something by something during something. Can anybody fill in the blank? This is our Mad Lib for today. I'll start you off. We want to raise something. Money. And we got to measure it though. How much money we want to raise? $1,000. We want to raise $1,000. Well, that'll work too. This actually cuts that out. Just screw up my formula, but that's okay. Yeah, it still works. We raise $1,000 during the month of, I don't know, November. So you say what we're going to do, by how much we're going to do it during a time frame, and then later on, what happens at the end of November? How do we measure whether we achieve that objective?
If we have $1,000.
We count our money, right? So simple. This is an objective. The goal is raise money, or raise funding for whatever we're raising funding for. And the objective is specific. It is raise $1,000 during November. Or it might be raise awareness by 15%, raise sales by 25% during November. So
is the objective like specific and goals generic?
yes, exactly. Exactly. Goals are vague. We want some money. Objectives are specific. Well, we want to raise $1,000 by November 30th. So yes, good objectives. They describe a clear end result, or clearly describe an end result. People can understand them. They're written in a way that everybody can understand them. They have a time frame. They have a firm completion date. And ideally, they're realistic. Now, this is where stuff gets hard. When you're planning your objectives, sometimes you don't know what's realistic and what's not. So you might, I don't know, let's see how much money we raised last year. That'll give us an inkling. Let's raise what we raised last year plus 10%. But sometimes the realism part is kind of hard because you do want it to be attainable. But sometimes it's kind of hard. And there's a practice that is done in all industries called lowballing. We talked about lowballing. That's like when you know you can raise $10,000 by November, but you tell the boss, you know what, we only raised $1,000. Let's go up to $1,500 this year. And then you raise $1,500, or you raise like $10,000 because you knew you could do it. And the boss is blown away because you said you could raise $1,500 and you did $10,000. Woohoo! That's called lowballing. Commonly practiced, probably very highly unethical. But yeah, you guys can look that word up later on. And again, back to this theme. Remember what I said a while ago? PR objectives, PR goals, PR work has got to sync up with management objectives. Because we are subordinate to management. Ideally, we would be equal to management, but that's not how life is. There are two methods of management. One is managing by objectives. Management by objectives. And the other is management by results. And these are two different approaches to PR. Remember, objectives are specific and measured. And sometimes what happens is your PR campaign may be falling short of the objective, but you still work to achieve that objective. How can I explain this? It's like the objectives become the principles that guide the campaign, and you tend to stick to the objective. President Bush is famous for saying, you don't want to change forces in midstream. It's managing by objectives. Managing by results is different. We may change we may drop our campaigns. We may tweak the campaigns. We may relocate the campaigns. Those are managing by results. You all share a Coke with somebody. Anybody share a Coke with somebody? Was it James? Did you get a James?
Yeah.
You got a James? Did you share it with another James?
No.
Okay.
I gave it to my mom.
Oh, you gave it to your mom. Okay. Hey, that's nice. That's very kind. That's very. Thank you. I like that. Anybody else? Nobody else share a Coke with anybody? You know the Share a Coke campaign. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Share a Coke campaign. What happened was they had great results in Australia. Yes, they had great results that campaign in Australia. And so what did they do? They said, well, let's do it in the United Kingdom. So they take it to England. Great results. And then about a year later, they bring it to the United States. And James is the only one that shared a Coke, so you guys make the call on that. Management by results. Is that effective here? I don't know. All right. All right, so think in terms of how publics we discussed. We've discussed a lot of different publics. We talked about media, employees, government, consumers. There were two more. Does anybody remember those? Media, employees, government, consumers. I guess government includes legislators and lobbyists. Anybody else? What? Management?
We said employers, so.
Yeah, no, these are the publics that we've talked about. How about,
International.
we got international publics and
Community?
community publics. You guys remember the crack houses? If crack houses looked like Mac headquarters, then they would be more tolerated. People would be less afraid of them. I just love that example. I guess I'm the only one that thinks that's funny.
So, do we need to write those down, those last two?
Yeah, I threw these out as examples, but here's the point I want to make on this: is that you got to talk to these people different, and you got to address different members within each of these different publics. Like media people, you're going to be talking to journalists. You got to talk to journalists differently than you do your employees or lobbyists or legislators or people who buy your product. I mean, these are all very different people. So knowing that you have to talk to these people differently, that is going to shape the duties of the people working on the PR campaign. Does that make sense? Great. I've already talked about during our break from technology, we talked about management or managers versus technicians. Remember management, there's management, then there's PR management. Management runs the company. PR management runs the PR operation. Managers make more decisions, while technicians make like micro level decisions, like what font to use on the brochure, or what, or who to send off the press releases to, things like that. So, ideally, reporting to a CEO would be much, for us PR people, would be much preferable to reporting to an advertising or marketing department. And why do you guys think that might be? Why would we rather report to CEOs than somebody in a department?
They might relay your message wrong or twist it to benefit them more so. than
Yeah,
your
or the
original
department,
plan.
right.
Yeah.
And ideally, I mean, again, we talked about this is a big principle of PR. It's about building relationships with people. And that's what PR people ideally do best. But when we're interpreting a public and advertising wants to, or marketing people want to turn that into an opportunity to make money, but if we do that, it's going to make the public angry somehow. Then yeah, there's another layer. There's a middleman. And ideally, if we're going to have good relationships, we should cut out the middlemen between us and management. Yeah, let's look at some examples. One thing I'd like to talk about real quick is hierarchical versus network setups. What is hierarchy? What is a hierarchy? Anybody know?
Is that where there's like a boss and they have, like everyone has a boss?
You were both right. Yes. There's a boss beneath the boss beneath the boss beneath the boss. That is a hierarchy. Different levels. There's upper management, middle management, and then us working stiffs. There is also something called networked. And for example, in terms of hierarchical organization, things like police department, border patrol, law enforcement, all law enforcement, military, these are hierarchical things. Things that do violence are usually hierarchical. And then you get things like Al-Qaeda. So maybe that's a bad example. Network communication refers to people acting autonomously. This is what the Coast Guard has. The Coast Guard has a network set up where each port is autonomous. And they've got like 2 or 3 people, Coast Guard people, who do all the PR stuff for the port. And now the only thing guiding, and the only thing that, the only thing remotely making it hierarchical is a style guide, much like an AP style book. And this is what the Coast Guard, this is how Coast Guard PR is set up. Is they follow the same style book, like an AP style book, but they're independent and autonomous. If you can get in a situation like that, and you're a type A, then you can do quite well, and you can find it quite enjoyable. So let's take a look at PR agencies. Here's the advantage. Well, let's see. I guarantee this is going to be on a test. I guarantee this is going to be on your final exam. Can anybody tell me why using a PR agency would be valuable over using an in-house agency? There's one big word that starts with P.
Well, I don't know.
Wait, no, somebody said it. Did you say it? What'd you say? He said loud? Perspective. Right. When you're stuck in the middle of what's going on in the organization, the office politics, the people stealing your pizza out of the refrigerator, and what else goes on? Paper airplanes and stuff like that, you lack perspective. A PR agency can come in, they can study a firm or an organization and have an outside perspective that will help the organization to see itself differently or from an objective stance. So that is an important principle about agencies, is that hiring an agency gives you an outside perspective on your organization, which can be very advantageous. Many organizations will get full of themselves and not realize that they're doing something wrong with their publics and creating problems. And so a PR agency comes in and says, hey, you need to stop doing that. You're making these people angry. PR agencies also usually have the advantage of some kind of credibility. What else? A lot of agencies will organize around specializations. If you guys look at this in advertising, we've also had 307. Few people. What did you guys talk about?
What we're
right now. So you talked about different specializations in advertising. Like you might have, for example, media planning or media buying or things like that, or creative boutiques and stuff like that. Same damn thing in PR. Some people will specialize in media relations. Some firms will specialize in government relations or social media. So I wonder, I don't know the difference. Like, it's like your specialist, like your brain doctor, neurophysiological-ologist, cardiologist. Cardiologists make a hell of a lot more money than the general practitioner.
They do taxes.
They do taxes? They do what?
They tax
They tax.
Tax a lot.
Yeah.
That's another word for they charge.
Oh, taxing. Okay, all right. See, the last young people word I learned was cray-cray. So now I learned another one. Taxing. So they're charging a lot.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I don't know, Posadas charges more or taxes more than Taco Bell.
So you like they tax.
The taxes. All right. Okay. I'm using this like 5 times today. I post on Facebook. I complain about the water company taxing. Oh, wait, maybe that's a bad example.
No, you use it right.
All right. So, I don't know if these guys get paid more to specialize. That is a research project for somebody. If you'd like to work as an independent study and examine whether specialized firms, PR firms, make more money than general firms, come talk to me. We'll do an independent study with you. All right. So, yeah, agencies are on the outside looking in. And it's kind of like writing. It's like you need a second pair of eyes on your writing. You've always done that. You've written something, you think it's beautiful, you hand it to somebody, they say, oh, it's terrible. And they point out why, and you say, oh, I didn't even see that. Does that ever happen to you guys?
Yes.
All right, it'll happen in my PR writing class. Just wait. Next semester, PR writing. But that's the advantage agencies offer. They offer a second pair of eyes. But here's what's going on in the world. A lot of agencies are being consolidated. They've been bought up by large communication companies. There was a joke on The Simpsons. There was a software company that, let's say, like Microsoft, at one point was buying out all these different software companies. And The Simpsons made a joke. There was some guy that had a software company or something. And Microsoft went and just beat the crap out of the guy and said, all right, you've been bought out. All right, I guess it was funnier. You had to be there for that. A lot of these companies are dominated by advertising companies. And so that ends up making PR people subordinate to advertising. And again, that's not an ideal situation if you're trying to build relationships with people. You don't want PR functioning as, well, hold on a second. Let's think about that. Is that Dove PR? We said warm, fuzzy. What did we say else we say about Dove? Warm, fuzzy, makes you cry, brings a tear to your eye. That's some fine PR work in their advertising. But ideally, PR people should be at the table with management, counseling them on decisions, explaining what's going to happen if they do something, and explaining what publics are going to think if they go through certain initiatives. Does that make sense? It makes us a middleman, or a middle person. We'll be gender neutral on that. Sometimes, like with the Dove commercial, being subordinate to advertising can increase the synergy. What does synergy mean? What's synergy? It's like 1 + 1 = 3.
People come together like that.
Come together, right? Okay, yeah, people come together, so 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
They're greater than the value of their parts. That is synergy right there. Good news for you guys, revenues are currently robust. PR profession is growing. We talked about that the first few days of school. There's money out there. You may have to go to work for a big company, a big firm, but there's money out there. What else we got? Let's talk about reputation for a second. There was a study, I forget what company or what companies they looked at. There's a study that says stock market value of any given stock, and 25% of that value is related to intangibles such as reputation, visibility in the community, and things like that. So imagine that. So Coca-Cola, if it's $100 a share for Coca-Cola, $25 of that value is just based on people feeling good about Coca-Cola. You see the polar bears families, what other advertising, sharing Cokes, things like that. 25% is intangible stuff. So reputation is going to involve things like brand, its position in the marketplace. What do I mean by position? What is a brand's position? Yeah, kind of. We're kind of getting there. It's like, who all likes, how old are you guys? Anybody over 21? Most of you guys are over 21. All right, so what is a top shelf beer? Or wine? Or
quality.
Liquor. Yes, it's better quality, right? So things like, I don't know, Guinness, various import beers or things like that. Fine wines from France. Then California wines tend to be like a mid-shelf. They're a little bit cheaper. And then we've got, what's we got on the bottom of the wine shelf?
Franzia.
Franzia. Oh, it gets lower than that. How about Night Train?
Never heard of that.
You guys ever heard of Night Train? How about Mad Dog 2020?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is one.
Yeah, these are bottom shelf things. Well, this is their position. You might think of it, the position in terms of shelf. Is it a top shelf brand? Is it a bottom shelf brand? Is it a mid shelf brand? And they all make money. They just appeal to different characteristics and budgets and stuff like that. Something I want to explain, I think I may have explained it, but I want to clarify that we kind of live in 3 different domains of existence. We live in the cognitive, in which we're thinking about stuff. We think about things, how things are going to plan out. We think about causality. We think about correlation. We think about all kinds of contingency plans. We imagine interacting with other people and what they'll say to us and things like that. Then we have affective. We live in an affective domain. This is totally the realm of emotions. Anger, love, affection, fear. There's a lot of things, affective things that we live with. We also, there's another domain, I don't have it up here, but it's the behavioral or physiological. Some of those are kind of used interchangeably. Like our body is kind of on its own time scale. Our heart rates increase. We call on somebody, I don't know, Danielle, or Lindsay, or Samantha. When I call your name, your heart rate increases, you get a little bit of dopamine, you get a little bit of adrenaline going. So there's a physiological domain. It has nothing to do with cognitive or affective. It's just our bodies respond to different stimuli. So some of the rational factors of reputation include things like the product, its performance, the product itself, how it's packaged perhaps, its performance. Emotional factors are influenced by customer service, CEO performance, personal experience with the company, especially if it's bad or if it's particularly good. So, if you got a good reputation, this is a principle right here. I need to get my cowbell, or my cowbell, recess bell from 1892, and ding it every time. When we have a good reputation, we can charge premium prices. We can get access to new markets, we can get access to new capital. So having a good reputation is critical for any company, for these reasons and probably more. Are we clear on that? I mean, this is really topics for a totally different class. But it's important for PR because PR is intimately tied with management. So let's think about reputation management. This is a critical part of PR because a lot of PR firms will specialize in reputation management. You see this all over the internet when you're looking for a PR firm. We specialize in reputation management. Oops. So, reputation management is defined as the ability to link reputation to business goals. Ability to link reputation to business goals, to increase support, advocacy, and increase organizational profits, organizational success with profits, contributions, attendance, participation, voting, sales, whatever. Does that make sense? Reputation managers, they will use their influence to do all kinds of stuff. You might persuade people to do stuff, whether it's consumers or investors. There's a lot of persuasion going on. And people with a good reputation are much more persuasive than people with a bad reputation. Have you guys seen that phenomenon? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of an example. Who's more persuasive? The Underwood. What's Underwood's name? Basketball coach? Brad Underwood. Okay. Who's more persuasive? Brad Underwood, or that guy that was like in Los Angeles walking down the street naked that got picked up by police? Now, who are you going to trust? Who's going to persuade you to buy something more? Brad? That's generally how it works. I mean, maybe some people might be more interested in the naked guy. I don't know. That's what reputation managers do, is influence people and persuade people to do different things that benefit the company. So let's take a look at where are the jobs. This is actually really fodder for another day, but we've got a couple of minutes, so let's go with it. Here's where the jobs are. In PR, right now. Anyone can get a job. Any of you after this class, or probably right now, could get jobs in social media, especially after next week. You guys are going to like next week. Investor relations and crisis management. And I feel crisis management is absolutely critical. I was going to kind of, I wasn't sure what to do whenever they canceled. My crisis person canceled today. So I didn't make a crisis out of it. But it's critical, and we are going to go talk about crisis management in a couple of weeks. Nonprofits, hospitals, Who else? What did we talk about the first couple of days of class? Who might you think is desperate for good PR people?
Hospitals.
Hospitals. Yeah, why hospitals? James, this is yours right here.
Just in case like something bad happens in the hospital department, we somebody to step in.
Okay, all right, so in the hospital, they got some crisis communication, possible crisis stuff going on. What else?
Other like me and my family, we don't really like hospitals, like we see kind of stuff now. So they need people to make other people feel comfortable about going to the doctor.
Why else might, okay, yeah, the hospitals actively, that is a common pursuit. You're absolutely right about that. What else? Why else might hospitals need good PR people?
Accidents happen and sometimes people, like anesthesiologists, put too much into the wrong time.
Okay, yes, they got their own crises, some
Some
crises.
people love the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, because you have a lot of hospitals to choose from.
Okay, yes, there might be competition.
One
We got
makes
two
people
here
feel
now.
safe.
I'm sorry?
One makes people feel safe. But that's what everybody's wants. Everyone feels safe. Everyone goes to the
They
hospital.
want people to feel safe. Okay, so they want to persuade people. Think about the bottom line. Let's go back to the bottom line. Remember in accounting, the bottom line is the profit. Let's see what happened. The last time I took my wife to the emergency room, we got 5 bills. I think this was like a $4,000 aspirin. I think that's what she got. She got an aspirin. She did get an x-ray though. Aspirin. Hospitals, what they're doing, I wish I'd saved that letter. In my summer principles class, I talked about this. The doctors, the medical community, and insurance companies are fighting it out. And they're using Publix against each other. This is here in Nacogdoches. What do you know about this, Lindsay? You know something.
My mom had to go into the hospital to the ER on Mount Street. It's way too much.
What did they charge? Well, wait, hold on. It wasn't just the hospital. Who else charged?
Doctors,
The doctor charges. The
the
emergency room charges.
any services you use,
The ambulance charges. Who else?
any services you use from
Any
them.
service. Yeah, like anesthesia or X-ray people.
CAT
So you might get
scans,
5, 6,
everything.
7, 8 bills from different people.
Yep.
You get that first bill, and you're like, oh, $4,000. I can't afford that. And then you start getting other bills. What? Another 1,000? What? 750? 500? And then they start stacking up.
And some of them aren't even addressed for here.
They weren't.
So,
Oh yeah. Well, they have billing in Dallas and Georgia and
Right.
elsewhere. Right. So hospitals. I mean, they're dirty. I mean, they're just awful. How about cops? Are you guys starting to see more police things like, oh, cops spends his spare time helping crippled orphan children? I'm seeing more Facebook posts that are doing that.
The stops are messing up lately, so they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole string. I mean, even before Ferguson. I mean, the story was guy gets beat up by police for not showing his ID or something like that.
Yeah.
The police had a terrible, police everywhere, and this has sort of a rhizomatic effect. It's like not just, it's like one police, like people might say, oh, Nacogdoches police, I don't know. They're afraid of them because they've seen what happens to Rodney King and Ferguson and other places. So I'm starting to see more pleasant Facebook posts on that.